Well, good morning, everybody. And we're really happy to be here and to be invited here. I have to say, like Pastor Joe said, it's been over 20 years we've been doing the ministry, and you know, we've walked by this church a whole lot of times, and I've always wondered about it. I always wondered what the congregation. So it's great to finally be able to be here and to meet you guys and to see. Like Pastor Joe said, Miriam and I, we started ministering to the street population, the street community of Montreal. It's in 1993. We started PAX. We called the ministry PAX. PAX, for those of you that know, PAX is Latin for peace. And the reason that we called our ministry PAX is because in the New Testament, often when the term peace is being used, it's not peace like we think sometimes here in Canada, that it means a term that means nonviolence. It's more peace that means bringing together something that was torn apart, and that's how we see our ministry. PAX Street Community exists to help the street community to reconnect, to be brought back to first of all, to God, to society in general, and to others. We want to help this community that was torn off to be reconnected. The loss of identity, mental health issues, economic hardships, personality disorders, chronic drug problems, these are all day-to-day realities of the street community. More devastating than all of those realities is the anguish caused by a life ignorant of the love of Christ. PAX not only exists to ensure that the street community realizes the access they have to health and social services, but also to help them realize the access they have to our eternal Father through the sacrifice of Christ. Our ministry on the street is very much that. We go out on the street to see the community where they are. We don't ask them to come to us. We go out to where they are. In the alleyways where they hang out, on the street corners, in the metro stations, wherever they are, we try to be a part of their life. We want to be a part of the community, a part of their life. And then as being part of their lives and building relationships with the street community, we're able to get to know them for who they are. We get to know, we don't often in middle class, we look at the homeless and we see their problems. We don't see the person. We see the drug addict. We see the prostitute. We see the person with mental health problems, but we don't see the person. We see the problems. And so part of our ministry is what we try to do is get to know the person for who they are. What do they believe? What do they dream of? Who do they want to be? What are they striving for? And then we get to build relationships with them in this way. We get to present the gospel to them in a very personal way, a way that touches who they are. We're able to share the gospel into their lives in a very special way, and we're able to accompany them and stuff, and seeing them grow not only in their knowledge of God, but also seeing them grow and helping them to get health services, helping them to get housing, helping them to get a stable revenue. Anything that we can do to help them out, we do also. Also, part of our ministry with PAX also is we're very connected with the local church. We believe in the local church, and we believe that God acts through His local church. And so part of our ministry is to encourage and to equip believers in local churches as they strive to interact with the street community. We do this through different things. One of the first step, the beginning activities that we do are compassion walks. Compassion walks are that we take groups from churches and we introduce them to our community. Like said, Miriam and I, it's been 20 years that it's not only that we minister into the community, but also we live down in the gay village. We live right downtown where a lot of the homeless are. And it's really important for us to live in the community also. We ask churches to come into our community and to take observation walks. These compassion walks are times of observation that we send out people 2 by 2. We send them out with a questionnaire, and we just send them out to be able to look at the homeless community. All of you, I am sure, have come downtown Montreal. All of you have walked down. But often when we come downtown, it's either for work, for going to school, or it could be just for going out to a restaurant or to a cafe or whatever. And since we have these other goals in mind, we don't necessarily spend the time to look at the homeless community that's around. These compassion walks are to help people to take the time to, as they walk downtown, to observe the community and to reflect on how does God see this. And we do a debriefing time after with the group to discuss that. We have compassion weeks, which are like compassion walks, but are week-long times, and we help groups they'll volunteer in different community organizations that help out the homeless to able to get even a deeper feeling of the street community. And also we do clinical supervision and consulting for local churches. Local churches that have problems like you guys had with the guys that were sleeping in your courtyard and stuff, and they're asking the questions, well, what do we do about this? Well, we take the time with churches and to help them to go through the questions. We don't believe that to tell what necessarily to do. I think in a way you guys know what you need to do, but we help you ask the right questions. Often we don't have the right answers because we're not asking the right questions, or we're not asking the questions in the right way. So we help you to ask the right questions so you can come up with the solutions and stuff, and the solutions that are stemming from the local church. Also, with working with the street community and working with churches, we see it very important to be involved in the community with the actors, the social workers, and different community organizations that work with the street culture. Part of my work is to work as a liaison agent between the homeless community and compensatory work program. I don't know if you guys realize what the compensatory work program is. In Montreal, if you get tickets, tickets for crossing the street in the wrong place, or you can get tickets. Actually, there's a lot of different reasons you can get tickets in Montreal. One thing that you may not know though, but if you're sitting on a park bench and you put your backpack beside you, you can get a $150 ticket. In Montreal. And now the police don't give those tickets to normal citizens, but they will give them to the homeless. And the homeless then, because of situations like that, will accumulate debt because they can't pay the $150. So the debt accumulates, and eventually, when the homeless person is starting to get his life together, it becomes very difficult to move forward because he'll have a $2,000 debt or a $5,000 debt to the city that he needs to clear off and stuff before he can keep on going forward. Compensatory work program is an opportunity for these people to work in community organizations, and they get paid $10 an hour, but they don't see the money. The money goes towards paying off their debt and stuff, and it's a way that they can clear themselves of this debt that happens. The compensatory work program realized that the homeless were getting a lot of debt, and they wanted to facilitate the access of their services to the homeless. So they approached Miriam and I to be liaison agents to help the homeless community be able to go through this program a lot quicker than what normal people will usually go through. And so, I am a member of the Quebec Association of Street Workers. Here in Montreal, there are many different street workers with many different community organizations and so forth. We have a professional association, and we're part of this association. And also, I work as the president of the board of directors of CIDALIS. CIDALIS is an organization that provides 2 hospices and affordable housing complex for active drug-using, homeless AIDS patients with mental health diagnosis. It's the 4 criteria to enter the house. You need to be homeless, you need to be an active drug user, you need to have a mental health problem, and you need to have AIDS or HIV. So the reason it's the 4 criteria, because often these are the people that were rejected everywhere else. They would go into a hospice, that's a normal hospice for people suffering with AIDS, and they couldn't stay because they had a mental health disorder. Or they would go to a place that helps out mental health disorders, but they couldn't be helped because they had an active drug problem and stuff. So we decided to have a place for the people with multi-problematic and multiple problems in their lives. If you go to the next slide, I'd like to share with you one of passages and stuff that inspire us in the work that we do. There are many passages in the Bible and stuff that talk about helping the poor, the marginalized, and that. But one of the passages that really continue to speak to me and that I continue to think about often is in Isaiah 58. Isaiah 58, the whole chapter, is a really great chapter. In Isaiah 58, you have the nation of Israel that is seeking God's face. They're seeking God's direction, and so they're fasting and they're praying and they're doing what they think religiously they need to do in order to get an answer from God, and God's not answering them. And so the people of Israel get frustrated with God because they say, we're fasting, we're praying, and you're not answering us. What's going on? And then God finally answers them, and he says, well, how can I answer you when yes, you're fasting and praying, but as you're doing this, you have the hungry among you, and you're not feeding them. You have the naked among you, and you're not clothing them. You oppress your workers, and you're not taking care of the foreigners. How can I answer you if this is what you're doing? And then God starts saying, well, if you feed the hungry, if you clothe the naked, and he starts talking about the blessings that he'll give the nation of Israel. But in Isaiah 58:10, it says something very particular. It says, Isaiah 58:10, and I'm using the New King James Version. It says, if you extend your soul to the hungry, and you satisfy the afflicted soul, then your light shall dawn in the darkness, and your darkness shall be as noonday. The word for soul that's used in this verse that says, if you extend your soul to the hungry. Other versions, you may have other translations. There's some translations that say, if you extend yourself to the hungry. Other translations to say that if you give your daily bread to the hungry. And stuff. But the word that's used in Hebrew here is a word that means soul. But it's not soul necessarily like we think here in the West. It's more soul meaning your essence of your life, and stuff. It's what gives you life, and so when God is speaking here and he's saying, if you extend your soul to the hungry, if you extend your very being to the hungry, and that started getting me to question, what does that mean? What does it mean to give your soul to somebody? As often when we think about helping the poor and we're hungry, we think right away about feeding them, about clothing them. We write checks. We recycle our old clothing. We do food drives and stuff. And those are all great things and stuff. But it's not extending our soul. And so if working for the past 20 years with the street community, And so we've seen Christians and non-Christians and how they reach out to help the community. And I have to say, even non-Christians are really doing a good job. They show love, they reach out, they show compassion, they give food, they give money. What makes us different as Christians? And so what makes us different and stuff in what we do? And I think that this verse is the key. And it talks about when you give your soul out to somebody, what does that mean? And in order to help know what it means to give your soul to somebody, I think when I started thinking about that, I said, well, who could be a good example of that? And of course, our best example is Jesus. And so our best example is seeing how Jesus lived. If God is asking us to give our soul to somebody, Jesus must have showed an example of that. And I'd like you I think there's many places in the gospel that we see how Jesus lived. We see how he gave himself to others. We see how he extended himself out to others. And one of the verses I want to share with you guys talking about that is with Luke 7. Luke 7 starting, actually I'd like to start, I know it says 36 on the screen, but I'd like to start at verse 33. So, Luke 7:33. It says, Jesus is speaking, and he says, "For John the Baptist came neither eating bread nor drinking wine, and you say he has a demon. The Son of Man has come eating and drinking, and you say, look, a glutton and a wine-bibber, a friend of tax collectors and sinners. But wisdom is justified by all her children." I really like this passage too, that's found in Luke 7, because you really get to see something very special about Jesus in this passage. Jesus loves sinners and loved people with tax collectors. He loves sinners, and so much that he wasn't afraid to get a bad reputation. Because why did the people say about Jesus, "You're a glutton and a wine-bibber, a friend of tax collectors and a friend of sinners"? If they said that of Jesus, it's because he was hanging around these people a lot. And the people around, because he was hanging around these people a lot, he started to get a bad reputation for it. And people started accusing him of doing the same things that these sinners were doing. But we know that Jesus wasn't doing that. That wasn't why he was hanging around with them. He was doing it, and so we knew that Jesus is perfect. He's without sin. So, why was Jesus hanging around with sinners and tax collectors so much? The sinners part I may understand. The tax collectors I still have a problem with. But I think we can see a bit more when we start in the verses in verse 36. It goes, "Then one of the Pharisees asked him to eat with him. And he went to the Pharisee's house, and sat down to eat. And behold, a woman in the city, who was a sinner, when she knew that Jesus sat at the table in the Pharisee's house, brought an alabaster flask of fragrant oil, and stood at his feet behind him, weeping. And she began to wash his feet with her tears, and wiped them with the hair of her head. And she kissed his feet, and anointed them with fragrant oil. Now, when the Pharisees who had invited him saw this, he spoke to himself, saying, This man, if he were a prophet, would know who and what manner of woman this is who is touching him, for she is a sinner. And Jesus answered and said to him, Simon, I have something to say to you. So he said, Teacher, say it. There was a certain creditor who had 2 debtors. One owed 500 denarii and the other 50. And when they had nothing with which to repay, he freely forgave them both. Tell me, therefore, which of them will love him more? Simon answered and said, I suppose the one he forgave more. And he said to him, You have rightly judged. Then he turned to the woman and said to Simon, Do you see this woman? I entered your house, you gave me no water for my feet, but she has washed my feet with her tears and wiped them with the hair of her head. You gave me no kiss, but this woman has not ceased to kiss my feet since the time I came in. You did not anoint my head with oil, but this woman has anointed my feet with fragrant oil. Therefore I say to you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven, for she loved much. But to whom little is forgiven, the same loves little. Then he said to her, your sins are forgiven. And those who sat at the table with him began to say to themselves, who is this who even forgives sins? Then he said to the woman, your faith has saved you, go in peace. I find this is a really amazing story. As if we see Jesus eating with the Pharisees, and the woman comes in. And it comes to question, what does this woman do when she's washing Jesus' feet with her tears and wiping them with her hair and not ceasing to kiss his feet and anointing them with oil? What is she doing? Why is she doing that? It's a woman that's coming out from nowhere, a sinner, coming into a house, and not just any house, a Pharisee's house. If this woman is a sinner, she knows she's not welcome in the Pharisee's house. We can see through the reaction of the Pharisee as if that she's not welcome in his house, because he doesn't want her even touching him, because he doesn't want to be unclean. So what's going on that this woman comes in and starts washing Jesus' feet and kissing them and so when we think about it, what is she doing through this? And what her actions and what she's doing? She's worshiping Jesus. We can see that as normal. We can see why. We know why. We know Jesus. We know why she's worshiping Jesus. Why she's adoring Jesus. Why she's doing these actions and stuff to him. And so, because we know who Jesus is. And this shows that this woman knew who Jesus was. I don't know if she totally realized. I don't know if she had the theology down or the doctrines down. I really don't think so. But I think she sensed something from Jesus that drove her to do this. And, I really liked our time of worship together. I don't know if because often the church that we go to is a French church. It's l'Église du Plateau. You guys may know it because you let us use your church a couple of times and stuff. And in a French church, well, we sing in French, we worship in French. So a lot of times I come to English churches and the worship songs, I don't know them. It's the first time I hear them, and it's really great. A worship song is really great the first time you hear it and stuff. And I really loved your worship songs. But this woman, why she was washing the feet with her hair? Because she was feeling the same way that we're feeling when in our words of the worship songs we were singing. When we say that our bones sing out that feeling when everything in our body sings out to praise God. Now, this woman, she wasn't singing. She wasn't dancing. She wasn't playing instruments like normally you do. But I think she was praising God in the only way that she knew how to. She was praising Jesus the only way that came naturally to her, that came out. She saw something in Jesus. She realized who he was, and her actions were to praise him in a way that was totally natural to him. On the other hand, let's look at the Pharisee. How does the Pharisee react? How does the Pharisee recognize who Jesus was? Well, we know by his reaction about the woman's actions that he really doesn't know who Jesus is. What does he say when the woman comes in and starts washing his feet? He said, if this man was a prophet. The Pharisee invited Jesus into his home. Probably because he was very curious. He wanted to know who Jesus was, what he was about. he probably thought that Jesus was a teacher, because he says, when Jesus asks him the question, he responds, "Yes, teacher, he says, Simon, I have something to tell you." And he says, "Yes, teacher, tell me." So he recognizes Jesus as a teacher. But when the woman, what was he thinking in his head when the woman was washing the feet? If this man was a prophet, so he would know what type of woman was teaching. So this Pharisee thought that Jesus was a teacher, thought that, maybe he could be a prophet. But in no way did he realize that Jesus was the Son of God. That Jesus was the Messiah and the Christ that the whole nation of Israel was waiting for. He had no idea. So because he had no idea who Jesus was, watching the way the woman reacted, he couldn't understand. Because if he knew Jesus was the Messiah, he would realize why the woman was doing it. Just as us, when we read the verse as Christians, we realize why we can relate with the woman and why she's doing that. Now, why am I bringing all of this? Is because with the community on the streets, it's the same way as with the woman. Somebody on the streets, in the street community, that is unchurched, that really doesn't know what church is all about, they'll react a bit differently when they get to know who Jesus is. I'd like to tell you a story of a guy I knew. His name was Joe, and Joe was he was young. He was younger than me, so I'm 44. He was 30 something. But Joe, he was on the streets for quite a while, and he was estranged from his family, but he was starting to get his life together. And I was working with Joe, and Joe, he had a sister that was a Christian, and Joe's sister was trying to reestablish the relationship with her brother. So one thing she would do is she started inviting Joe to church. And said, you come to church with me on Sunday, and then we'll have lunch together and stuff, and then, you come back. So the first day that she was about to do this, Joe told me that he's going to church, he's going to see with his sister, and the night when he came back, I saw Joe, and so I said, "So, how was it? How did it go? How'd you like church?" It's the first time that Joe set foot in a church. And I said, "So, how did you like church?" And Joe looked at me. He goes, "Oh, it was great. I loved it." I go, "Yeah? What was good about it? What did you like about it?" He goes, "First off," he goes, "you go into the church, and stuff, you sing karaoke." And stuff, and I was looking, I go, "What?" He goes, "Yeah, you go in, and they sing right away karaoke." And I was thinking in my head, what kind of church does his sister go to? And then I go, what do you mean? Explain to me what was going. Well, he goes, you go in, and there's a band in front, and they play music, and they put the words up on a screen, and everybody stands up and sings together. He goes, it's Christian karaoke. And stuff. So, inside I was really laughing, but he was serious, so I didn't want to laugh in front of him because I didn't want. But he was very serious about the whole thing. It's funny to see how sometimes our acts of worship can be perceived differently from different people. And so, with Joe, he perceived our worship time as karaoke, and it, we have to admit, it does look a bit like karaoke, and so, but it's not. The fact of what it looks like is not important. The fact is, our hearts, as we're singing, as we're gathering together and stuff, as one body, as a church, and praising God, it's our hearts what's important and what's coming out. The actions aren't so important. It's our heart in it that's important. And it's our hearts and our feelings and the way that our whole being is crying out to God is the worship part of it. That's the worship. That's the praise. The same way is with this woman. And so she has this thing inside her that something she sees in Jesus that just makes her want to adore Him, to worship Him. And she washes her feet and kisses His feet, and it came out like that. But it's worship. And it's not the actions, it's our hearts that make it different. And I got to tell you, when you're going to have people from the street community and street-involved people and marginalized people come into the church, they're going to do some funny-looking stuff, but their hearts may be in the right place. When you get to know who Jesus is, and especially for the first time you realize that who God is, who Jesus is, and you have access to Him that's so personal, yes, all our hearts cry out. And it makes us want to worship Him. And people coming from the street community may worship Him in some strange things. What the challenge for us, for the church is how are we going to react to that? Are we going to react as Jesus reacted with the woman, recognizing it as worship, recognizing it as love that it is, and welcoming her with it? Or are we going to look at it like the Pharisee did, saying, who is she? What is she doing? What is she doing here? As a church, we have the choice. We have to see. I think God, and part of getting back to Isaiah 58, of extending our soul to somebody, extending our soul to the hungry, that's it, is trying to, how do we integrate them into our community? How do we help these people be a part of our church, of who we are, and how do we help them come and have the opportunity and the access to worship God? It's the challenge I give to you guys as you're thinking about this. And if you'd like, and stuff, we're here, like I said, we're here, we can help you out with it too, and stuff, with the people around you, the community around. Because, and stuff, you have a great church in a great place, and stuff. And the opportunities you have are incredible, and stuff. And you have the street community is here, with Montreal just there, Saint Denis, and stuff, they're here, and stuff. And it's time to think about how we can integrate these people into the church. And thanks.